The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, it's Mark here. Probably be kicking off in a few minutes. Still only got about a quarter of the attendees, so we'll probably just give everybody a few minutes and then we'll kick off. Thank you. Just start recording this. The webinar will be available for people to download at probably later on this afternoon or probably tomorrow morning. So if anybody misses it in the office and you want to watch it again, you're certainly able to do that. So my name is Mark Kelly, and I've got with me...
And Justin here from Melbourne.
Excellent, okay. So we're going to kick things off. You'll have to watch through the dreaded PowerPoint, but we'll try and keep things nice and snappy for you. Here's a lovely little pictogram, or whatever they're called, from Autodesk, just outlining the overall philosophy of the way that they see Revit as it's moving in the future. And so they've broken up they've created what's called a roadmap, what they're calling a roadmap, not a terribly unique term, but essentially they're putting forward what they feel are the most important features in the short term, medium term, and long term. And they are putting a roadmap out there so that people can actually see what's happening and get an idea of where Revit's going to be developing. They've broken it up into three main parts: design, optimize, and connect. And the design part of it is essentially creating an area where you can intuitively, quickly create design models that capture your ideas. Optimization is they're going to be trying to incorporate tools more and more into Revit and on the cloud that allow you to optimize the design. And then you've got the connectivity, which I'll mention quite briefly, which then looks at the ability for people to work together more efficiently inside Revit. So with regards to the roadmap, I won't labor over these slides. I'm sure you'll be relieved to hear. But everything that's got the star and the tick there is effectively something which has been done in the software. Anything that doesn't have the tick or the star there is something which is in the pipeline. So that's with regards to design, and I'm not going to go over the ones that have got ticks because that will be sort of more or less the nature of the presentation that we're doing today. So optimization, there's some really interesting features there. That multi-monitor support, I'll let Justin explain that in more detail, but that's a pretty cool feature. If you haven't seen that, if you haven't opened up Revit 2019, I think that feature in itself could be well worth doing the upgrade, but I guess you guys can be the judge of that. And then we've got the connectivity, and you can see over to the right-hand side there. There's a little there's a blue one there in the top right. It says PDF underlay. That's a feature that people have been requesting for quite some time. Everybody's obviously very keen to be able to incorporate that into Revit. The developers have more or less said that it is something that is in the pipeline. So at least, if it's not in it in 2019, which it isn't, then at least we know that it's something that Autodesk is aware of and that they do have plans to incorporate that into the software. Okay, not going to go into too much depth here, but with regards to connectivity, there have been some developments in Revit of late with regards to ways of being able to collaborate on a Revit project not just locally, as you've always been able to do in Revit, well, not always, but for quite some time, but the ability to be able to work with people on remote sites or work with consultants outside of your company. Now those used to be you could only really do that internally in your local area network, but there were developments in more recent times with things like Revit Server, which allowed you to operate across different offices. Unfortunately, that technology didn't really take off due to, I guess, technical issues and the fact that there was a fair outlay with regards to infrastructure. The next thing that came along was collaboration for Revit, and that is a web-based technology, and that allows you to operate inside your office, across interstate, nationally, and also to collaborate with other consultants. There were a few problems with that technology, one of which was to do with security of your model if you were collaborating with other people. And I think the other thing that has been identified as an issue is the fact that as you're progressing through the design, if you're going from the design stage to the construction stage and so forth, there's different silos of information which occur. That is something that's being addressed. So the new technology is called BIM 360 Design. As you can see in the slide on the left there, as you're kicking off with the design part of it, you can use this technology to collaborate with people all across the globe. Effectively, because it's cloud-based, it's very clever. It uses vectoring technology. If you synchronize to the model in the cloud, it doesn't upload the entire project. It only works out the differences between what you've got and what's in the central model. And then as the intention is that as the technology develops, that information can then be transferred from one part of the technology, the design technology, into the glue, and then the build, and then the ops technology as the design moves on to the pre-construction, construction, and operational phases. So that's something that's in the pipeline. But it's all based on that Autodesk Forge technology, which is that sort of orange disc at the bottom of the slide. That's a technology. It's a web-based technology, and Autodesk is really going to be starting to push this because it's a scalable technology and it's very flexible. Don't want to go into too much detail here, but the issue of file security has been addressed in BIM 360 Design. When you take a snapshot of your model and issue a set of drawings, then that gets accepted by the project manager who's overlooking the entire project, and that model then gets pushed up to the cloud in read-only format, which means that other people can't actually open it and start putting adjustments to it. There are some technologies built in already into this collaboration space which allow you to identify changes that are made in the model between different issues, which is very handy. So that's sort of a bit of a taste of that technology. I don't want to go any more into that one, but what I'll do now is I'll hand over, I should say, to Justin, and we will make him presenter, and start talking.
Yes. All right. Just making sure everyone can see my screen right now. All right, good. It's been a very cold morning in Melbourne. If you hear any ruffling noises, that's just my leather jacket. Sorry, apologies in advance. All right, so let's get on to this new features and demonstration part of the presentation. So Autodesk has invested some effort in modernizing the Revit interface. So the first thing we notice is now in Revit 2019, before committing to open a file, we will actually see the file version in the open dialog under the model thumbnail. So that's a very good development. It can save us a lot of time just figuring out which year of the model it is. Second one is the tabbed views and the multi-monitor support. So this is another step forward. And you see now the modern internet browsers, such as Chrome, they are adapted to this tabbed fashion of organizing windows. So now it's glad that we can see that in Revit as well. And levels in 3D views. So levels has always been a very important element in Revit, together with grids. That pretty much is the skeleton of your model. So now we have visibility of levels in 3D views as well in Revit 2009. At this stage, it's still only limited to orthographic or axial views, as you would. And we can move, modify, and delete levels in as well in 3D views, as well as the elevations and sections. And there has been improvements in perspective views as well. Now we can have uncropped perspective views natively in your Revit window, and we can toggle between the orthographic and perspective views natively in the very same window. All right, last thing but not least, just waiting for the slide to fresh. Yeah, last thing but not least, we can split railings. Now in Revit, that's a brand new development in regards of railings. And we have scope boxes also available inside of the 3D views as well now. So I will just quickly switch it and demonstrate those functions in play. Right. Okay. So I believe everyone is looking at my Revit window now. So this is the file I am about to open. So the thumbnail to the right, underneath that, it displays Revit 2019. So when you work in the office, you have many models on many projects. This is a good feature, so you can instantly figure out the version of the Revit file. I'll open it now. All right. So I'll just zoom in here. So as soon as we are in this view, we find out Revit has opened this window as a tab to the user interface. So if we open more views, such as I'll randomly select some like 3Ds or level 2 floor plan, you will see those tabs just open one behind another inside the window. So the benefit of that is if we want to switch the sequence of it, we can do that. And if we want to, for example, 3D view onto your monitor, we can drag this out and move it across. Because right now I only have one window that is shared. So I can just show you, like, it will to the second screen. You just have to take my word for it. And so this new tabbed window can be accessed under the View ribbon. Here we see the new icon. One is a tab window next to the good old tiled window. So one shortcut is TW, the other one is WT. So if you want to switch between the old-fashioned tiled window style and the tabbed window, so you just toggle between the TW and WT, and you can quickly switch between those display mode. Yeah. And the next one I'm gonna show everyone, it's the improvement in the perspective views. So let me just create a camera shot inside of this project. For example, I'm just creating a camera here looking into the kitchen. So this is the pretty box standard Revit camera views we are used to till now. Let me just switch it to the shaded views. Yeah, down here, we now can finally click on this do not crop this view icon. So once we click on it, the image will become full bleed into this Revit user window. So then it's just a much better view and a much wider view range than your traditional, like you have to stretch the boundaries around. And to the left of the panel, in the property palette, we have this new entry called projection mode. So we can switch that from perspective into Oxa. Then now we're back into the extrometric style that we can do freehand modelings and do align. All those modeling tools will be available, so we can natively switching them in the 3D views now. All right. Okay, this one, the split railing and the improved scope boxes. So I teamed them together to demonstrate how we can use that in a day-to-day kind of operations. So we've always been struggling with modeling stairs. Yeah. So I'm just gonna show you. Here, let me just try our model, our monolithic stair. Yeah, so this is usually the way we model stairs. And if we commit to it, have a look in the 3D. So this is a pretty box standard use stairmaster stairs. Revit will automatically fill in the landing in between the two rungs. But in a typical, like for example, apartment buildings, when this stair goes up in a spiral fashion, like if we do multi-level stairs, we still need extra landing at the end of the first rung. So the traditional wisdom is we just add another landing into the stair. We just model that into the stair. So we click on landing, we'll landing by sketch, and we just model the next bit of landing here. So once we click OK, let's go to the 3D view. Yeah, just to remind everyone, because I have created this scope box called stairs, now I can actually zero in on the stair I'm focusing on. So in the 3D view, we have this scope box. So if we just change that to stairs, it will just crop out all the other ones. So it's almost like a section box, but with names nowadays, and you can toggle between which one you want to focus on. All right, so now we model landing, we find out the problem is Revit just with its algorithm, it will just shave off, it will just model a rail here and closing off this whole landing. So this is when we use this split tool. So the good old shortcut SL. And here, on the top of the screen, we have this function called delete inner segment. So we just select one part of the railing, and somewhere here, that's where the stuff is. So we open it up, and with this to accommodate for the next run of stairs. The next thing I'm going to do, so this is back to 2018 new features. I'll tell Revit this stair actually go to multiple levels. So I go select levels, select the levels I wanted to go to, and press OK. And let's see what Revit has given us. So here, if I just make this a little bit taller. Yeah, so you see not the stairs now come with the landing and the rails spiraled up. Of course, it needs a little bit more financing than this, but I'm just showing you with a couple of simple clicks. Now we can actually model for the stairmaster kind of fire egress kind of stairs with relatively ease with this new functionality called a split railing. And the other thing, as we notice in this Excel view, we have all the levels that's also visible. So that helps a lot when we try to figure out if the stairs is going to the right height and if the railings are going to the correct positions. The 3D levels definitely helps. All right. Going on. All right, back to the slides. So let's move on to the strengthening part of Revit. So by strengthening, I meant like the functionalities that existed in Revit in the past, and now with the new version of Revit, new features has been added to it, just beefed up the functionality of particular features. So first thing, let's start with all in filters. So before the year 2019, all the previous versions of Revit, all the filter rules, if you add more rules to filters, it's always by default as an end rule. So that means the object that's you want to select with filter has to satisfy each and every one of the criteria that's laid out in the filters. But now with this year of Revit, you have the freedom to select either the all rule or the end rule, which means if the all rule just means the object in question has to only satisfy any one of the given criteria, and it will be picked up by the filter. And double field patterns. So this is another good feature as well. So double field pattern essentially it's with any previous objects that has field patterns, it can now have a foreground and a background field pattern, which gives the user much more freedom to mix and match and come up with much more different styles of field patterns. As we deal with more and more complex projects, field patterns sometimes does get very much complex in projects. And in this year of Revit, we also have this thing called vertical text alignment. So previous versions, the text is always vertically aligned to the top. So if you have more text to add, Revit always add it to the bottom. So it's pretty much good. It's good for 80% of the situation. But what if you have like a very long bit of text? You always want to stay just that much above the title block. Yeah, and now you have the freedom to do that. Text boxes not come with vertical alignments. And there's other little improvements, such as renaming views with a slow double click. So that saves the right click and selecting renaming. And there's another function that's added. And my personal opinion, it's just because it's there doesn't mean it's you have to use it. I do have my personal holdbacks on this. So this one is called suppress confirmation dialog when renaming views. So by that means when you rename a level, Revit will ask you like, do you want to rename corresponding levels? And you can suppress a dialog box from ever coming up again. And the last one is the warnings when deleting levels. So now will actually have itemized warnings when we delete. And one last thing of this strengthening bit is now we have the freedom to dimension curved objects. So in demonstration later, you'll find out Revit actually is dimensioning between curved surfaces instead of the good old-fashioned with dimensioning from points to points. So that actually makes the whole dimension much more flexible than dot-to-dot dimensions. So let's go to my Revit and then let's have a look at it. All right. So first thing, let's get on to this. All-in filters. So I just zoom into, this is the simplest example. I have three type of walls in this project. One is a 1 hour fire rated 100. One in the middle, it's a 2 hour fire rated 200 mil concrete wall. And I have a smoke sealed and interior drywall. So in the past, if we want all of them to come up with the override in our, for example, 5 compartmentation plans, we will have to create 3 different filters to pick up each one of them and give them unified overrides. So now, with the all rule in Revit, I created this filter called fire rating. So let's look at what this filter is actually doing. So inside of this filter, it's your typical rule-based filter, and it is filtering the walls. And with the all rule in place, I can put in 3 separate rules, both the fire rating equals 1 hour, fire rating equals 2 hour, and fire rating equals smoke. That means any of the walls, as long as it satisfies any of the criteria, it will be picked up by the filter. So I click OK. So now essentially those 3 walls already got picked up by the filter. Then next thing with filters, moving on to the double filter pattern. So we have hatch patterns. Essentially, it is depicting the materiality of objects on our drawings. So in the traditional and field pattern overrides, if we want to override it, for example, as red, then we will lose the original hatch, which you look at here, the double diagonal for the block, the concrete field, we'll lose all of that. But now with the field pattern, double field pattern, here we have the foreground field pattern, which is its original hatch, and we have the background. So now we can actually define a color for the background pattern. So maybe a lighter color here. And then we click OK. Click OK. So now we see the walls got overwritten with a background fill, but still maintain the foreground and materiality kind of hatch. And that is actually, makes our drawings visually more informative, in my opinion. All right. Text alignment. So this is an easy one. So here, this text alignment, I have set it to bottom align. So see what happens if I, for example, increase the content of that. So the text would just, instead of growing downwards, the text box is growing upwards. So alternatively, you can have that middle line or top line as well. So all the previous versions, it's set to top line by default. Now we can change that. And those 3 ones, so itemized warnings when deleting a level, rename views and the suppress confirmation. So I'll just quickly show that. So starting with renaming views. So one click, give it another slow click. Now we're in the renaming mode. So that will save us a couple of extra clicks. And going to the 3D view. So let me uncheck the scope box. So here I have a slab modeled, and that is hosted on the top of slab level. So let's find this level, top of slab. So if I want to change this name, we come up with this window we're very familiar with. So now we have the option to suppress this message from ever coming up again. So if you ask me how useful this is, it's usually in big projects you want Revit to do as little quote-unquote smart things as possible. I would usually rather trust myself to rename things manually, because here if you rename it, it will just rename everything into top of slab 12, and that's not usually what we want on a big project. And if we suppress it, the problem is this message will never come up again. So like if somebody committed to yes or no, you can never change it again if you suppress this thing forever. There's no way to unsuppress it, if you ask me. So I'm still on the fence with this new feature. So everyone, and do it at your own risk. And the third thing is, if we delete this level, for example, if I press delete, this itemized warning that's always been there in Revit, it will tell you 3 elements and 1 views will be deleted. And but actually now, if we expand this warning window here, Revit 2019 will give us an itemized list of all the things that will be deleted together with deleting this level. So that is a much better visual prompt for the users to knowing the implications of their like a deleting level. Yeah. All right. All right. Cool. All right. All right. So one last thing in the strengthening here, this dimensions for curved objects. So we double click on that. So let's create a new dimension. And I'll just move this slowly to see what is actually getting picked up by this dimension tool. It's this whole curved surface to the side of the ramp. So we are actually dimensioning curve to curve instead of point to point. Just to prove this, I will go back to this level and move this section tag. So once I move it, I go back into the section tag, it is still getting dimension because it still detects 2 curved face inside this view. Yeah, because now the section is going through the curve in a different way, so the dimension actually changed. Yeah. All right. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right. Good. So so the Revit 2018 already come with the detailed steel connections, and you can download it through your Autodesk app. So you can download all different type of steel connections Autodesk has created for you, and that is completely interoperative with between Revit and Advanced Steel. So this year of Revit, what actually got improved is now customers can create their own connections. So in able to do that, Revit actually has an extra ribbon now, which is called a steel ribbon. And inside the steel ribbon is a whole range of tools for the customer to create your own fashion steel connections. And Revit has also added 2 subcategories. One is called plates, the other one is called bolts. And we can use the new tools to cut and cope the steel. Yeah, and that all enabled us to do this engineering level of steel joints. So I'll just quickly show that, how does that work in Revit. All right, so I believe, yeah, everyone's looking at my Revit screen now. So here I've already got a foundation modeled, yeah. So if I want to just model a steel plate and a couple of bolts on it, the simplest thing, yeah, I can just select this plate icon, and I go set work plane to top of foundation. I will just sketching a steel plate. Yeah. So as soon as I click that, Revit gave me a warning at the bottom saying the created elements are only visible in detail level. Fine. Yeah, that's okay. How many times we had that before? You model something and you don't get to see it. But at least now the warning message is a lot more detailed. So we switch to fine, and we find out we still don't see the play. So what could be causing that? All right, we go to the visibility and graphics. Yeah, this window is very familiar with everyone now. And we go to structural connections. So now we have bolts and then we have plates. We just need to switch those two out for this connection to appear in this view. So now we have a steel plate. And if we want to model some bolts on it, so select the plate, press spacebar, select the plate again. So now we're actually not modeling individual bolts. We are actually setting out a pattern for Revit to fill in the bolts. So now we have drawn a circle, the bolts fill in, and the default number is 3. So if I want like 12 of them, Revit will fill in them along the path. And here we actually have all sorts of catalog of different bolts for us to choose from, depending on your project. So that is just the quickest way to show you the customized steel connections. Now it's available in Revit. All right, so the other improvements in Revit, I'm just gonna quickly touch over. So now we have free-form rebar shape now, and the rebars are fully schedulable. And all the extra contents that came in at towards the second half of 2018 now will also be included when we install Revit 2019. And Autodesk has put in this little chair to the right as a little Easter egg in the Revit library once you install Revit. And there are some tools that it's available in Revit 2019 as well. So first one is this precast automation. So that enabled Revit to quickly split big sections of precast walls into by its weight and max sizes, and it will also add in the fabrication level of detail, such as your props, your bushing, your grout tubes, and all those things. And after those things are modeled, one button will generate a shop drawing for each and every panel of the precast. And now this tool includes the automation for the lattice girder slabs. All right, last thing from me here, it's now the Rhino models. As soon as we, once we export them as IFC, it will be recognized by Revit, so we can copy and mirror them natively inside of the Revit operation. All right, that's it. I'll hand it over to Mark now. Yeah, Mark?
I'm sorry, just trying to make presenter. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Just moving on from those points there, I'm just getting onto some of the last points here. And so one of the things I want to very briefly show you is the improvements that have been made into materials in Revit 2019. So there was a new render engine that was incorporated into 3D Studio Max this year, and it basically is to replace the standard rendering engine that was always included in, that has been included in 3D Studio Max for quite some years, called Mental Ray. The new one's called Arnold, and it's actually owned by Autodesk. It does offer some considerable advantages over the Mental Ray rendering engine, in the sense that you can create very high quality renders with more predictability in less time. Now that rendering engine has actually also been carried over in a more simplified version into Revit, and as part of that, the materials have been upgraded so that you can take advantage of that rendering engine. I'll very quickly show you a demonstration of that in 2019. Also, I just want to touch briefly on this new idea in Revit of trying to reflect real-world conditions that you might get in hydraulic systems, specifically hydronic systems, but it can also apply to other types of systems. And it also reflects real-world conditions that you would get in something like a data center, where you have planned redundancy. So for example, you might have 3 pumps that are sitting, one of them runs all the time. If it fails, the second one kicks in. If that fails, then a third one kicks in. It would be, I believe, a tier 3 data center. So in Revit, you can now have parallel pumps. You can now create what's called a duty cycle and simulate what will happen if 1, 2, or 3 of those pumps are actually operating at any given time. You can also create parallel branches inside a hydraulic system, and then you can simulate the way that those actually will work more accurately than you could in the past. So what I'll do is I'll switch very quickly to Revit, just showing you this concept. I'm not really going to get into bogged down too much detail here, but you can see what I've done is I've created 2 pumps here. It's a very simplified version of a hydronic system with just some radiators and so forth. And then you've got your inline pumps. But the inline pumps have basically got the ability now to put them on different duty cycles and simulate what would happen if both pumps were on and how that affects the flow rates inside the pipes. And then if you change the duty cycle, then you can simulate how that would actually change the flow rates. Also here I've got a parallel branch, and what you can do is you can add a separator in, which then changes the way that Revit sort of regards the system and allows you to simulate those parallel branches inside a hydronic system. Okay, so very quickly, I think it's an internal image of a render that I did the other day. Not a terribly high quality render, but I think it tells a story. On the left is the mental ray materials that used to be in Revit. On the right are the new, what they call physically based materials. And you can see the difference in the reflections and the depth of the bitmap is considerably different. If I go to this 3D view here, not that one, try again. If I go to this 3D view here, you can see on the left, oh sorry, I'll try again. On the right, we've got the old 2018 realistic view, which has got a bump map, which is an image that's used to tell the rendering engine which part of the material is sticking out or recessed. And then you can see the 2019 version of pretty much the same material. Considerable difference there. The step up there for the grid is much more sharply defined. The actual fissures in the ceiling tile is a lot more well defined. So that's just in the realistic view, let alone in the rendered view. So you can see there's a considerable step up in the quality. Okay, so Revit XT. Now, if you are a subscription customer with Cadgroup and you've got full-blown Revit, then you are entitled to Revit XT. It's an add-on that we give to you for free, which has a number of very powerful tools built into it, which I won't go into. We do have other webinars that deal with Revit XT as well, so you do have the ability to view those as well. I just wanted to show you this first new tool in Revit Revit XT 2019, I should say. And in Revit, you have always been able to do a match type command, but now in Revit XT, we've added in the match instance parameters command. So if I were to grab all of these, actually I'll grab the doors because they're the ones that I want to affect. If I grab these doors like this and then go to the match instance parameters and then click on this door. So I want to take the parameter for Mark from this door and push it into the other doors. You can see that when I do this, it then gives me a whole heap of different properties that I can grab from. I'll just choose that one. I can store a template for this as well if I want to. And you can also apply these in a lot of instances. You can apply these properties across categories. It's not just necessarily limited to just being in the same category. So if I go apply, then I'm going to get a warning, of course, and now you can see that Revit has applied that same instance property, which is very powerful. Okay, so just with regards to that, there's also another tool which is called Create Tags. So if you if you if you've been tagging objects inside the project, you'll know that sometimes Revit can be a bit messy when it tags all objects of a category. It can be very messy. So what I've done here is I've just created you can create templates here to store all of these and come back and reuse them, like doors and walls, for example. This one's just a door tag. I pick the family that I want to use for this particular operation. I tell Revit whether I want it to be a leader or not, and whether the orientation is vertical or horizontal. Now this is the interesting part here. If I go offset Y, because if you think about it, we've got, if you're in a plan view, X is left and right and Y is up and down. If I was in an elevation view, then Z would be height and Y would be left and right. But anyway, I'm in a plan view. So just take note of that 2000. So if I do that, what's actually happened is it's created the tag on that wall there, but it's set offset at 2000 millimeters. It's not an annotative scale, it's an actual physical scale. So it's actually put it at a distance away from the wall rather than just doing what Revit would have normally done, which is basically that, sticking it basically smack bang in the middle of the object that's being tagged. So those are two of the new features. There's another feature which I'll very quickly mention, and that is the ability to create a sheet set based on unpublished revisions on sheets. So say for example I've just gone through and I've created a new revision and I've called it revision 4, and then I've gone into my sheets and I've updated them to show revision 4, or I've placed views that have revision 4 on them, which automatically does the same thing. So what I can do is go into this tool here. If I go to Sheet Set Manager and I pick revision 4, you can see it's now identified all the ones that have revision 4 as their last revision, and then I can call that whatever I want to and then hit OK. So what that has effectively done is it's just streamlined that process now for me, because if I go to print, it's actually already picked revision 4 here, and you can see it's automatically picked those 3 sheets that had that revision 4 as their last issue, and I can now print those and publish those. Okay, one last thing which I think is pretty cool is the upgrade family tool, which has been incorporated into Revit XT. So I've preset this up. I've got a folder here which has I think it's a 2017 Revit family in it, and a few other ancillary files. So if you've got things like type catalogs, files like text files or JPEG files that you might be using, then you can actually elect to copy those over from the old folder into the new upgrade folder. And you've also got the ability obviously to skip backup files, which is quite nice, and process subfolders. So if you've got a whole folder that's got all of your Revit families in it, you can actually go through and process the entire folder and all subfolders internally in it. So if I go upgrade families, this is just a batch process, so it'll probably just flash up really quickly. But what it's done is effectively created a copy of any ancillary documents that were in that folder, and it's also created new copies of these ones in 2019, and it's basically upgraded those projects into the new version of Revit for me, which is quite cool. And that doesn't just apply to 2019. So if I do this, if I run this operation in 2018, it'll upgrade from previous versions of Revit as well. So we'd just like to thank you guys for listening in. We realize that your time is precious, so we want to thank you all for that. Now, very quickly, we've got a few questions here. I'm just going to answer some of the questions, and I might just hand over to Justin to respond to some of them as well. Is RevitXT 2019 available yet? Well, yeah, I sent through an email to the developer this morning. It is unofficially up on the link, the link that we give out to you that has the latest build on it. It's not the official build. It is technically speaking a beta, but for all intents and purposes, it's ready to go. We are hoping that overnight that new version of Revit XT will be published and it will be officially ready to go. Okay, there's a few ones there that Justin might want to talk about quickly.
Yeah. So let's go with Nigel's first question about transparency in the foreground and background hedge patterns. So right now, both the foreground and background transparency is still only handled by one slide bar, which means the foreground and background will have the same transparency as all time. And they only available when the hedge pattern is surface pattern, which is consistent with all the previous years. And creating a named scope box by Olivia, so that's easy. So just go to the view ribbon in Revit, look for the scope box icon, create that, and select the scope box again, and inside of the property palette you can type in a name of the scope box, and that will be universal through all the same different views. And can we have an arrowhead with angle greater than 90? So no, that's not part of the future. I will request it. And that's it. Yeah. Can we add borders to spot elevations instead of having to load a separate symbol? What does that mean? Add borders to spot elevations. So it just means spot elevations. The text needs to have borders.
Yep. Okay. There's some features there now. Just to let you know that there are two main forums where you can go in and basically ask for the new features that you want. So there's a thing called AUGI, which is the Autodesk User Group International. They have a Revit wishlist forum. Now I know people who have been wanting new features do find it discouraging that they keep asking or mentioning it to people and saying we'd really, really love this feature. But if you want to really have your request heard and recorded, the AUGI Revit wishlist really is the place to do it. Now, of course, obviously, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will come about, but those wish lists are aggregated. So if they get thousands and thousands of people every year asking for the same thing, assuming that there's no underlying reason in Revit why it can't be incorporated, it will get put on the roadmap. So it really is the only part. You know, you talk to us as techies, and we can agree with you and say, yeah, that'd be a lovely feature. But you know, we're not on a development team, and that's really using the AUGI wish list really is the way to get the developer team's ears or ear collectively.
Yeah, Mark, we only have 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Quickly address Murray's question. So if you go to the spot elevation, you find the elevation essentially is just a label inside Revit. So you can click on the edit type of the label, and one of the options is for the text to have borders. And if that's not what you actually meant, just feel free to send an email to support@cadgroup.com.au, and we can have a look at this offline. Yeah.
Excellent.
I think that's pretty much it. Just thanks everyone for coming.
All right. Well, as I said, this will be available if you want to talk to. We'll post a link up on the CAD blog to this and publish it up onto the Cadgroup YouTube channel as well. If you haven't been to that, then do a search for it. So, from myself, Mark, and
Justin here,
just like to thank you all for your precious time. And have a good day.
Happy Revitting.
Right. See ya.
See ya. Bye.